This is my 2001 Jaguar X Type. It's the 2.5 V6 Petrol Manual, and today I'm going to give it an engine oil change. Well, it's a crisp November morning. I've just started the car. It's just coming down off the auto advance, and I'm checking the mileage, and it's at 120,335. So it's time to do its 2-year oil change. The Total Care Handbook is also the service book. When I bought the car in March 2013, I bought it from a dealer who'd obviously taken it in as part exchange, and they serviced it. I did check that it had been done. It had clean oil and a new filter. I also had it re-MOT'd just in case there was something dodgy about it, but it was good. The last stamp in the book is at 84,000 miles, so it seems pretty likely that it did actually do 20,000 miles on the oil. You can see the interval is 10,000 miles or 2 years. So my car is on the 120,000 mile mark. Unfortunately, it's not 12 years old, it's almost 17 years old. The driver's handbook gives the capacity of the engine for the oil change, and it also specs the oil. So here on section 713, engine oil including filter, 6.5 litres. And this diagram in section 77 shows that for the temperatures that we operate at, we need a 5W30 oil. So while I've been looking at the book, I've just been running the engine. I just want to warm it up slightly. I don't want a red hot engine, but if it's warmed, everything will be much easier to undo. So I've waited until Euro car parts have a 35% off online weekend deal, which means that I've managed to buy 10 litres of oil and the recommended filter. There's more than one brand, but I bought Fram because I really like Fram and I've used them for years and years and years. And that's all come to the princely sum of £58.17. Okay, so you've got to jack the car up high enough to be able to lay under it without worrying of banging your head and getting squashed. The filler cap is easy enough to find as it's marked engine oil. We'll leave it in for now. First we'll find the drain point, which is obviously underneath. So laying under the middle of the car, this is the bottom of the air conditioning pump, and right next to it you can see the oil filter, which is just up in there. So that needs to come out, and then we need to find the drain point. Well, this is the sump pan here, and you can see it's a bit oily because I've got an oil leak which I've not been able to cure. This part here is a plastic air scoop, which in my case has been torn off. It was bigger than this, but it doesn't really do anything. So we need to follow round and find where the drain plug must be. Now, this looks like a drain plug, but it's round. It's not something you can undo. So presumably it's somewhere else, which I'll have to find. Well, this hasn't been made easy. You can see this plastic guard here. If you look up inside it, just here, this is the drain point. So I'm going to have to take this plastic guard off, unless I'm lucky enough to be able to undo that. But this thing is really rigid, and I've got a feeling that will break if I don't take it off. So this is a Torx fitting, and once you start it off it's easy enough to undo, but I can't do it and lay under here and film at the same time. Right, that only has one screw, the other end's just kind of popped in on the spigot. You can see it. It's got to be this one. It's right at the bottom of the sump pan, and that takes a 13mm socket. So it's time to get the drip trays out, bearing in mind there's more than 6 litres of oil in here. I'm going to need a few drip trays. So my drip trays are all old cooking pans that have been discarded. Really useful. They're all different sizes, fit in different places, and are free. But that's looking good. Right, let's get in quite near that top of that one, so we'll just change trays. Note the patent cascade system that I have here. Now of course not all the oil will come out because some of it is in the filter, so when I take the filter out, some of the oil will come out of there as well. So I left it to drip while I went off and made a cup of tea, and you can still see from this rather beautiful reflection that it's still slowly dripping out. So I'll give it another 5 minutes. So this is the drain plug. This isn't a magnetic one like some of the other plugs. It's got a very long thread, and you can also see that it's got a rubber O-ring, and there's a bit of sealant on there. So I'll put a bit of Hylamar or something equivalent when I put it back in. I'll clean it all up first. So I've put the drain plug back in, just tightened it down with a ratchet, and you can actually do that from the front of the car, hardly laying under it, which makes it much easier, because now I need to take out these drip trays. So this is the exhaust collector, and that's the exhaust pipe, and right next to it is the filter. And that is why you do not want a hot engine, because you're going to burn your hands like hell if you touch this when it's hot. This should be hand tight. You should be able to undo it with your hands. But I've got a feeling you'll probably end up using a chain wrench. I'll try it with my hands first and then explore other ways of doing it. Okay, well I don't have the special tool that goes on the end of this, and the other filter I've bought would need a different special tool. And I don't have a strap wrench or a chain wrench that can get in there, so I'm going to use the old traditional method of banging a screwdriver through it and then turning it with the screwdriver. Now I haven't actually got much space to work with, I can only really get it in here, but we'll see how that goes. Of course the oil will want to drop out of it, so I need to put a cloth on the floor. Okay. So. Quite stiff. Oh, there we go. Ooh. Right, I've loosened it off, and I'm just using the screwdriver as a conduit to drain the oil out. And then once that's done, I should be able to undo that by hand. I can't say that was the easiest job I've ever done removing a filter, but it wasn't that bad. While I'm waiting for the other filter to drip out, I'm just going to put some oil in the new filter. Normally it's marked on them to fill them up before you fit them on the car. It is on the one that's on the car, this one isn't. So we'll put in some of this liquid gold. This is 5W30. This is what is recommended, and this cost me like £23 for this one. And you can see, it didn't need that much. I don't think I'll put in any more than that. Okay, I had to bang the screwdriver in it again and turn it some more because it was really tight. But now it's only hand tight, and they should just spiral off. When you go to put it back on, you're supposed to do it up to hand tight, or as it says, contact with the gasket, and then 3/4 of a turn, which is actually hand tight. Alright, so let's come off. I can see that that's a really good clean filter, and probably I didn't need to change that one, but as I didn't put it on, I thought I would put a new one on. They're only £6 anyway. Just to compare the two, they're pretty much identical. They look slightly different. This one's got the filling instructions on it. I've never heard of this manufacturer. It says it's made in Austria. You have to oil the gasket, and it actually tells you to do it on here. Put a smear of clean oil on there before it goes back on to get a good seal. Right, so I've eased the new one back into place. You do need 2 hands for that to try and get it square onto the thread, and it's just touching there, and it tells you to turn it 3/4. So you need to look for something on there that gives you a marker, and then turn it 3/4, which is there. It's hand tight. Any tighter than that is too much. So that's the hardest part of the job done. I am going to put this little shield back on, because if anything it stops the oil getting onto the transfer box and going down the back of the car. My car does leak oil, and it leaks it right from the top from one of the sensors, and I really haven't got around to actually changing the seal, because I think that's going to be a really difficult job. So the little air scoop went on remarkably easy, and all there's left to do now is to actually fill it up with oil. So the oil goes in here, you can see the chains in there. You need a nice clean funnel. This one that I use is actually a food quality funnel, stainless steel. So pour it in quite slowly so you don't make a mess. Chug it all over the engine. I found that this can is quite drippy, and it's dripping down the front of it here. So I'll put a big wodge of cloth on the engine. I don't want loads of oil all over the engine. I've put in the whole 5 litres of this can, and I've noticed that there's a measuring stripe on the back of it, so I'm going to put in another litre out of the other can and then test the dipstick. Right, that's another litre gone in, which means there should be 6 litres in the engine, which means it should be right on the end of the dipstick if it's correctly calibrated. So I'll have a look at the oil level now. So the dipstick's just there with a red top. Pull it out. Now, you can just see that there is a blob of lovely clean oil on the end of it. So it now needs another 0.8 litres to bring it up to where it's supposed to be. So I've put in the 0.8, and you can probably see that it's just covering the crisscross parts. So it's just under the max, so that is almost perfect. Make sure the cap's back on. I did manage to spill oil over the top of the engine, but I've just cleaned that off with white spirit. Okay, all the oils are in, everything's done up tight. We'll just give the car a little run up to circulate everything round. Sounding nice and smooth. Now I find with my car, when the oil starts to get thin, the engine ticks a bit, and the only way to cure that is to change the oil. It's not ticking now, so I think that's probably done the job.